What is going on, YouTube universe? My name is Trent. Some of you guys at home might know me as Zirra from other content that I throw out into the interwebs. And welcome to my AFL channel, The Hip and Shoulder, where we discuss everything Australian rules football. And this video has crept up on me somewhat. I completely am bamboozled by the fact that next week, Round 0 kicks off. The 2025 season is officially underway. This week we've got the practice matches going down for the community series. It has just been such a fast forward of a start to 2025. We're already on the doorstep of March. I can't get my head around that. But today, this video, it's going to circle around two things. First of which, we are going to get our tips locked in for the 4 matches for Round 0, which kicks off next Thursday night. And the second part, we'll be discussing the tipping competition that I am opening up to all of you guys at home. I'm still wrestling with the idea internally about why we even have Round 0, and it only, equates to using 8 out of the 18 teams of the competition. It is something that I feel the competition doesn't benefit from. It throws this random bye system into the opening rounds that is not necessary. The players have had all preseason off to get to this point in time, so it's not like they need an extra bit of rest to kick the year off. And it's a rather redundant round. I mean, if you wanted to add an extra round, why not tack on an extra game at the end of the year and have every other team play it and have it open to, more exposure for each team instead of hand-picking 8 teams to showcase in random games that really aren't even considered by the AFL to be kicking the season off. Because while we have Round 0, Round 1 comes around, Richmond Carlton, Thursday night, is considered the season opener even by the AFL. So why are we still getting this Round 0 shit? I don't know. Open the comment section up to you guys. Let me know how you feel about the inclusion of Round 0 over the last 2 years. I seriously don't understand why it's still going on, but we're here. With that being said, when we look at the fixture for Round 0, the 4 games that we are given are actually really great matchups, and it's just a shame that we only get to see 4 games played over this weekend, and then we have to see other teams miss out over the course of the next 3 weeks following because of this bullshit bye structure that comes into the mix. We could have had a perfect round here if this was opening round and we saw these 4 games compiled in with the others, like your Richmond versus Carlton and everything else that kind of we know historically happens in Round 1. This would be a killer start to the season, because these matchups here, they are going to kick the season off in a big way. It's just stupid that we have to endure this whole Round 0 bullshit. And I'm rambling about it because I fucking hate it so much. So I do apologize for that. Let's turn our attentions to the tips. Kicking off Round 0, the first official game of the 2025 season, we have the reigning premiers in Brisbane taking on Geelong down at the Gabba. Or up at the Gabba, considering I'm in Melbourne. So we'll say up at the Gabba. And this is going to be a very interesting watch. At the time of this recording, there has been one community series practice match go down. That was the Essendon-Geelong game, in which Geelong fell short of the mark against Essendon. I don't know whether that is an attribute to how clean Essendon were with moving the ball, or whether Geelong just coughed up opportunity, because when you have a look at the scoreboard, you could argue that if Geelong had been more down the narrow, they would have won the game. But this is 2 teams coming head-to-head that are missing some very important pillars in both of their lineups. Geelong with no Tom Hawkins, Brisbane with no Joe Danaher. Going to be interesting to see how both teams move forward without that key figurehead that has been their mainstay forward for the last how many years. And people are suggesting that Brisbane are going to fall off rather severely because of the loss of Joe Danaher. They've gone and picked up, I think it was Sam Day that they've gone and picked up as a reserve. Now, he's no Joe Danaher, don't get me wrong, but on any given day, if he turns up to play, he's a very serviceable and very well attributed key forward. And I feel this is where players like Eric Hipwood really need to step up and come into their own, especially on the big money he is being paid. Brisbane have obviously gone and brought in Levi Ashcroft, which gives them another classy inside midfielder. Kitty Coleman, obviously, with the ACL kind of fallback, is keeping him out of the team, and it'd be better to see, him in that lineup. But we've seen players like Zorko go to a new level in Coleman's absence. And similarly with Geelong, No Tom Hawkins, so you've got Shannon Neal, who now gets the opportunity to step up. Jeremy Cameron, is he going to have to work overtime to compensate for Hawkins not being in that team? We saw in this practice game that players like Tyson Stengel were trying to do a little bit too much and getting caught up in the theatrics of it all, and I don't know whether that's going to be Geelong's undoing. Both teams looked incredibly good, but going into this game, up at the Gabba, I'd be stupid to not back in Brisbane to win their first game, coming off of the grand final that they just won, kicking their campaign to potentially go back-to-back off strong. And I think the travel is definitely going to play factor here. Gabba is a fortress, and we know Brisbane historically have dominated at the Gabba, and then they fall short when they travel. The fact that they're playing their first game at home, let's lock it away. Oh yeah, I've got to pick my team before I do a margin. That'd be a great idea, Zero. Let's go Brisbane. And we're going to go Brisbane by... Let's go 21 points. Couple of, few goals, few behinds. I think that's a decent enough margin. Geelong's probably going to come out and absolutely dismantle me and put me in all sorts, because last year's tipping for me was not the best. Let's try to hope that we can rebound and have a better year. But Brisbane should kick this year off rather strong. Friday night, Sydney Hawthorn. This, again, is going to be a belter. All 4 games, I've already said it, have potential to be fantastic games of football. And, again, it's just a shame it's the only 4 matches that we're going to be getting, especially with how long we've waited for the football season to come full circle and come back around. But no Callum Mills for the first opening rounds of the year, which is a little bit upsetting because there was a lot of hype about Callum Mills coming back into the team. We know at his best how talented he is. As the team's captain, kind of having to sit from the sidelines and watch instead of being able to lead your troops out there and, rally behind them on field is probably something that's going to be weighing on his mind and weighing him down, mentally and emotionally. So this setback probably affecting him more now than I think a lot of people would care to admit, but I'm just hoping he can get back to it, because as I said, at his best, he's really good to watch. They still have an arsenal of players to unleash, though. Let's not forget the trio of Errol Goulden, Chad Warner, and Isaac Heaney. And then you throw in James Rowbottom, who I thought took strides last year. Amadi and McDonald are starting to find, some chemistry with each other. Brodie Grundy had a great year in the ruck. Defensively, they are so sound. And with certain moves that have been made at Sydney, there's whispers that Tom McCartan has been trialled as a key forward, which with his set of hands that he has, could actually be a revelation for Sydney. And it's going to be very interesting to see how Dean Cox begins his tenure as the Sydney senior coach, and how he integrates people into certain positions and see what kind of flair he brings to the team. Hawthorn, on the other hand, we know they went into the trade period, I wouldn't say rather heavily, but they landed some pretty big names. They got Josh Battle from St Kilda, they got Tom Barrass from West Coast, and they have really solidified their defensive 50. You put Barrass in there and Battle in there, who are great intercept defenders. You throw James Sicily in there, but you now have the opportunity to maybe have Sicily play up forward more often than not, because you've got some taller figureheads in defence. Going to be very interesting to see how the Hawks go this year, but this game is being played at the SCG. Dean Cox's first game. There seems to be this kind of trend that, teams that are led onto the field for their first game under new tutelage pick up their first win rather quickly, and I think Sydney are going to do this at home by a couple of goals. It's going to be a great game to watch, but I think Sydney have the edge. Saturday afternoon, the Gold Coast play host to Essendon, and we just saw last night, as I said, Essendon put on a great performance against Geelong. Players of note to talk about that were missing from that game: they didn't have Peter Wright up forward, they didn't have any Mason Redmans in defence, and Mason Redman, off of that kind of fullback, halfback transition running role, I think is huge for Essendon's defensive makeup. I'm not sure who else is missing, but I think the 2 biggest ones were definitely Peter Wright, Mason Redman. But they were impressive. They were clean. They were willing to move the ball a lot by hand and getting some free flow run going. The only thing that probably frustrated me watching Essendon in that game was for the last 4 or 5 minutes, they just played defensive football and kept kicking the ball backwards, and it took the sting out of the game, I feel. I don't like it when teams go into defense mode and just spend 4 or 5 minutes kicking the ball backwards and sideways and don't make any forward progression. But they've got some really good young talent. I mean, the combination of Nate Caddy and Isaac Kako is going to be absolutely insane. People are going to go wacko for Kako. Kako coming out in his first official game, but I know it's a practice match, but I mean, he kicks 4 goals, could have had 5 if Draper didn't snag that one on the line off of him. Incredible talent, and I think Essendon could prove a lot of naysayers wrong this year if they have that kind of makeup that they showed us in this game. On the flip side, Gold Coast heavily went out on a limb to pick up some players during the trade season. They poached Dan Rioli from Richmond, they went and poached John Noble from Collingwood, and they have set themselves up with 2 like-minded running halfback flankers that I think could be incredibly damaging within this Gold Coast lineup. They've gone and drafted Leo Lombard, who before doing a little bit of an injury in a practice match a couple of weeks ago, he was looking fit and firing and adds a little bit to that midfield makeup. And you've just now, when we collectively look at it, you've got Elliot Himmelberg, who's come from Adelaide up there, who can pinch hit as a secondary ruckman, can play a key forward role to help out Ben King. It's going to be very interesting to see how this makeup works for the Gold Coast, especially for players like Sam Flanders, who was running off of the halfback flank for a little bit last year, now finds himself in a little bit of limbo because Dan Rioli and John Noble are going to have those halfback flanks locked up. He's not going to play that halfback role. You've got a midfield that already has Noah Anderson, Matt Rowell, Leo Lombard, Swallow, players of that, even Tuke Miller. So he's going to have to run off a half-forward flank. And can he be damaging as a half-forward flanker? I'm not sure. So there are still a lot of question marks around the Gold Coast, whereas I feel with Essendon, we have a lot more answers that are being given. For this game, though, up at People's First Stadium, we know how well the Gold Coast played there last year. I would be remiss if I completely ignored their track run that they had. I am going to go the Gold Coast. However, I feel if there is any upset looming for this weekend, it is Essendon knocking off Gold Coast at People's First. But I've got to back in the Gold Coast to kick things off, and that pains me. It pains me. The final game of Round 0 sees NG Stadium play host to GWS taking on Collingwood. This was an absolute belter of a game last year, and I feel it's going to live up to expectation again. However, going off of how I perceive certain teams to be performing this year, and just on that note, there will be a 2025 season predictions video dropping later in the week, so keep your eyes peeled for that. I feel GWS are going to get off to a hot start this year because I feel they're not just going to be one of the big improvers, but I do have GWS finishing within the top 4. Just a little bit of a teaser for you. Collingwood, though, they come into this game with a lot of players coming back in. They're choosing to sit players out over the practice games, which I understand. I believe no Braden Maynard will be taking part in the game against Richmond tonight. They're not playing Jordan De Goey tonight, so they're keeping some players on ice just to make sure that transition happens a little bit more smoothly when the proper rounds come around. I fully expect Maynard and De Goey and players of that nature to be available in this game. Josh Dacos has shifted to a more defensive role coming off of halfback. Dan Houston, obviously the biggest acquisition for Collingwood in the off-season, arguably one of the biggest acquisitions for the trade period in general. So having Josh Dacos and Dan Houston running off of halfback, that sounds absolutely insane, but then that throws up question marks. Where does Isaac Quaynor fit into the equation? Harry Perryman has been picked up from GWS and promised permanent midfield minutes, and during the preseason has looked fit and firing and has gotten huge endorsements from Scott Pendlebury. Who else to be better impressed at that club than somebody who's going to go down in history as one of the best players to never win a Brownlow medal in Scott Pendlebury? It is insane to think that this club still has the ability to bring in all of this talent and always seem to be in the conversation. They've dropped off a little bit, but I mean, we know that they've won a premiership in recent years. They've had to claw their way back up to that point. They had a really down year comparatively last year, but I think Collingwood will find some return to form. So this game is going to be a very good game to watch. On the flip side, talking about trades, GWS, I think the biggest acquisition, obviously, Jake Stringer, in the dying moments of the trade period, making his way to GWS. And while I don't think GWS's forward line is going to benefit, directly from him kicking goals, I think what happens in this makeup is Stringer goes from getting arguably the number one defender when he was playing at Essendon to now probably being third in line behind Jesse Hogan and Toby Green. So he takes an extra defender away, and if one of the more prominent defenders feel the need to take on a Jake Stringer instead, kind of leaves holes for GWS to kind of nitpick and kind of maneuver their forward line a little bit better to take attention off of a Hogan or off of a Green. And I feel that is where Stringer is going to thrive, because he can play further up the ground and drag a defender up with him. I've been on the fence about this game because I really feel Collingwood can rock up and do some damage here, but I feel just going off of where I have GWS situated for the season, GWS are going to win this game in a close one to round out round 0. So I've gone with all the home teams. Very fucking creative, I know. I didn't stray far from the path, but when you look at it, Brisbane at the Gabba, almost guaranteed a lock every week. Sydney at the SCG, very hard to knock off. Gold Coast proved last year that you play at People's First Stadium and more often than not, they're walking away with a win. And at NG Stadium, GWS, they're finding their feet, they're finding some form, and I feel GWS are coming into this season as one of the most informed teams of the competition. I feel they finally have the makeup to take that step that they failed to take in 2019 against Richmond in the grand final. I feel this is the GWS makeup that finally does take that step. With all that tipping out of the way, it is now time to officially open my tipping competition for 2025. Last year was the first time we opened it up within this particular platform, being a new channel and kind of stepping away from all the AFL stuff I did over on my gaming channel. And I'm hoping this year we can build upon it. And not just tipping wise, but I've got ideas to do different types of AFL content throughout the year to really bolster my stocks within the AFL community. And I'm really looking forward to expanding upon the channel that we're building, to growing the community, to sharing my knowledge with you all. And it all starts with this tipping competition. Get involved. Banter aplenty, I am sure, when it comes to, sharing our tips and getting stuck into me, because I'm going to be fucking terrible at it again, I can assure you of that. But the league code and the link that will take you to this league will not only be in the description of this video down below, but I will pin a comment down below as well. But that is it. First tipping video of the season done and dusted. I might change my tips closer to the day, because obviously team reveals will come into play, and if there's certain players missing or coming back in, it might kind of sway my decisions. But I feel comfortable with landing with Brisbane, Sydney, Gold Coast and GWS as my first 4 tips for the year. Do hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I do hope you guys are keen to get on board the tipping competition this year. Let's make it bigger and better than 2024. Do hit that notification bell before you leave so you get notified every time I upload. And if you want to get on board the community we are building here, hit that subscribe button down below. As I said, there is going to be plenty of AFL content coming. We are going to be doing weekly updates for the tipping competition with every round. We will be covering Supercoach videos for every round. There will be a podcast wrapping up the end of every round to discuss what has gone down, including a podcast this year that is going to wrap up the community series practice games, which will drop next week. So again, eyes peeled. And if you've got any ideas for content you would like to see me drop, always open to suggestions, so let me know in the comment section down below. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here, and as always, I will catch you guys next time.